I'm a product of a mixed marriage. Two people who are of different races, who are just in love, and it never seemed odd to me. It doesn't happen all the time, you know. It didn't click that like, oh, they're of different races. I didn't think of it like that. I thought of it like it's my mom and my dad.
This is our ongoing story about race.
A lot of emotion comes out when you talk about race and racism.
You can't say race doesn't matter. You can't say I don't see color.
It's about our town, our high-performing schools, our unsettling truths, and how youth led us toward the change we needed.
It's not always about why aren't students engaged. I think the question really is, how can teachers engage students?
Kids my own age at my school talk about their experiences and things they've faced.
It truly inspired me to go out and become more involved in so many different aspects of my community that I had never been involved in.
It is our community's story so far, but the issues impact every community in America.
They trained us to really understand the structures of power, not only within the school, but also within the community.
What do I like about the city of Davis?
I fell in love with Davis. I just love all the trees and just the kind of like the home like feeling that I get here.
I enjoy it. It's a great family atmosphere. It just seems really safe and clean.
I like to ride my bike around everywhere and eat organic vegetables, and this is a great place to do that.
I think it's great. I think Davis would be a great place to move to because it seems like the community seems a little smaller.
The sensitivity to the environment.
All the parks and the markets, and all together the people are good people. Crime's low, can't beat that. You guys got good schools too. Kids are nice,
Get a private school education in a public school. That's Davis.
Davis, California is located 15 miles west of the state capital. In 2006, Davis was ranked by CNN as the second most educated city in the United States. The population is 70% white, 18% Asian American, 10% Latino, 2.5% African American, and 0.7% Native American. Davis is home of UC Davis, one of the nation's top public research universities. The city is known for its college town atmosphere, its liberal, progressive politics, and high-quality public schools.
Things are good. We live in a nice town, people are smart, get an education, we have fun, and we're lighthearted.
Davis Senior High School is the city's only conventional high school. It ranks in the top 10% of high schools in California.
Hello folks, and welcome out to Davis High School. I'm Guy Haberman. Tonight the Blue Devils will be taking on the Fairfield Falcons. Both teams are 1-1 in league. Well, it's cool and calm outside, but it's going to get loud and crazy in here. Blue Devil basketball is coming up next.
It just seemed like a normal game as far as intensity, from the jeering.
Students' cheers fueled the competition. Throughout the game, when Fairfield players had the ball, chants were heard that some would later call racist.
Who's your baby father?
There was a lot of confusion, I think is what I remember, and people trying to figure out if that's something really indicative of racism, if that's just a few people getting riled up in the moment, or is this really like a greater social problem that we need to address?
Now entering the game is number 33, Ian Blair.
After the game was over, when the fans stormed the court, so to speak, we were just standing there, biting our lip, and our coach told us, to put it politely, get off the floor, go get on the bus. The coach gives you a talk, and whatever, win or lose. It didn't happen. He went straight to the bus.
The
crowd rushes the floor, and the Blue Devils have held on for victory. What a ball game. The Blue Devils over the Falcons of Fairfield.
Ian Blair was a Fairfield player at that game. He wrote a letter to the editor of the Davis Enterprise, our local newspaper, that was published the following week.
I felt like Jackie Robinson during his first season playing Major League Baseball. Not only did the Fairfield High School players have to hear the fans' vulgar insults, but mothers, fathers, and children of all colors had to listen to the despicable behavior. Since when has crowd support and participation turned so ugly? Davis High School should be ashamed of the way its fans acted during the Davis vs. Fairfield boys basketball game. The racial slurs and profanity used during the game were hurtful to us, the Fairfield players, but they were also embarrassing for Davis High School. I have played in hostile environments before, but never have I heard such bigotry. This is not what I would expect from a school in the city of Davis, a city that prides itself on cultural sensitivity and enlightened thinking. It seemed less like Davis, California in 2003, and more like Birmingham, Alabama in 1960.
Davis High student Scott Dickey countered Ian's perspective.
While our chants can be mean, to call them racist is absolutely absurd. First of all, one of our best players, A.J. Riding, is of African-American descent. So why would we say anything racist? Go ahead and call our crowd mean. Many others have. We like our reputation and plan on keeping it. We don't like the reputation for being racist, though. Calling us racist just because we are jeering at your players? The letter writer from Fairfield has slandered a school that has done nothing to deserve it.
In 2003, Mariko Yamada was a Davis High parent and a deputy county supervisor. She is now a California State Assembly member.
When I first read Ian's letter and then read the subsequent letter from the Davis High School student, I believe it was Scott Dickey, I thought, here are two students that are presenting this issue to the community, and where are the adults? I did make an effort to get the school administrators to respond, and I really felt that the system brushed me off.
Ms. Yamada lamented the lack of a swift, strong, and clear public message that the Davis School District takes allegations of racism as seriously as promoting good sportsmanship, but that didn't happen. 3 weeks later, an African-American family in West Davis woke up with plans to go to the farmer's market. They walked out their front door to find racial epithets spray-painted across their cul-de-sac. It was the work of Davis High students after a Friday night party. The husband had played football for UC Davis, and the couple had recently settled in Davis to raise a family. They would eventually sell their newly purchased home and leave town later that year.
The spray painting incident occurred 2 or 3 weeks after the Ian Blair incident, and it seems logical now to see that when an opportunity that was lost to correct the behavior at the high school basketball incident, that it would give rise to allowing those same students to be emboldened to commit this other crime. And it was very shocking. It was very tense to think that in Davis we would have an incident that open and that brazen to spray the N-word on someone's driveway.
There's definitely a lot of tension over the whole issue on campus. It was definitely a turbulent time, and one that kind of heightened racial tensions at DHS, so definitely was different. It was a different atmosphere.
At the urging of community members, an announcement of the crime appeared in the local newspaper. The next week, a community meeting to discuss the recent events drew 100 people. They took out a full-page ad that declared to law enforcement, to schools, and to families that they did not want a community where hate crimes slipped by unchecked and unpunished. Within 36 hours, over 350 Davis parents, teachers, elected officials, students, and other residents asked for their names to be included too. Previously, police had said that too much publicity had stalled their investigation. However, within 24 hours of that meeting, 2 Davis High students were arrested. 2 weeks after the full-page ad, the City of Davis Human Relations Commission sponsored a community forum for people to talk about their experiences growing up in Davis.
this is going to be hard for me.
You know, I believe in Davis for 34 years.
My name is Babajide Opana, and I'm a senior at Davis High.
And I've never really felt racially discriminated until February 6th, after the City Council voted on the biosafety level 4 not to oppose or endorse it. And the next day, I got a lot of emails and phone calls, very nasty phone calls, especially one who said that I should learn how to speak English better, that I should learn how to talk better, and I should learn how to do this and that.
In the first grade was also the first time I was called a nigger in the Davis High School system. The student was not suspended, the student was not reprimanded. It was simply a warning for the first time offense. From first grade to 12th grade, I've experienced countless discrimination and racial events. And
we're all Davis community members. This is our town, this is our city. We should be proud of what we have accomplished. And we are all residents here, we are all citizens. We are one, and we should love each other, or tolerate each other at least.
As a child, the view of the world is much different than the child of an adult, than the view of an adult. You see the world as a perfect place for you to have fun, you're a kid. My image of the perfect world is broken in first grade. I don't think any of you will really understand the impact that has on a child's life. When other kids were just playing around in the playground, I was worried about my skin color and my race and my ethnicity.
What's most important, I think, is educating our adults. To pretend these are children and that's the issue is deceiving ourselves. We're the issue. The adults are the issue. And starting at that level, in addition to starting at the same time as in the schools, is important.
And I tried not to think of it as discrimination, but it really hurt.
I had a group of young guys walk up to me and tell me that my group of friends and I are overreacting about all this. Now, I really don't see how we are overreacting. Unless you have been in my shoes and had to deal with what I had to deal with the last few years, I'm not overreacting.
Most of the population is white. They choose to ignore race as an issue because they have the privilege to ignore race as an issue.
They had repressed feelings for so long, and now they had that place to speak, and it just came out.
This forum went on for over 6 hours. Students made it clear that race was a daily part of their lives.
My brother, there was this chance for them to go into GATE, and he wanted to do the test, and the teacher told him not to. The teacher was like, no, you shouldn't, you're not going to be able to pass it. But he did it anyway, and he passed it, and he's in GATE right now. What was really sad is that teacher went to the people from GATE and asked them, what's wrong? Like, there has to be a problem with that test because this kid could not have passed that test. So she went along, she actually went to some administrators and told them, this kid cannot be there, there has to be a problem. And she was really mad, and she even the first month she kept until asking how is he doing, because she did not believe my brother was capable of doing it. He was always kind of there was always something for that teacher to put him down. And he had a really low self-esteem. And it's hard for me I don't know what to tell my brother. He's so young, he's 9 years old. And what am I supposed to tell him? You're supposed to deal with it? What am I supposed to tell him? He can't stand up for himself.
At the same time in the community, other parents and educators were responding to incidents of bullying in general in some Davis schools. While educators began to reconsider how race was affecting their schools, others in the community thought about the upcoming 20th anniversary of the death of Tong Hai Nguyen. 17-year-old Tong Hai Nguyen had recently immigrated from Vietnam with his family and was attending Davis High in 1983. He was the victim of a racially motivated stabbing, Sergeant Jerry Gonzalez was one of the first officers to arrive at the scene.
I keep referring to young man. I don't want to get too close to it, but I still have thoughts of it every year. He was down on the ground. There's I believe a couple of students standing close by. They left class. They began to argue, two of them. The actual suspect came out, saw that his friend was having difficulty with these three smaller young men, and they were very small in stature. They were smaller than my height and lighter in weight, and they were trying to combat this bigger individual. Then the real suspect went out to his car, which is parked just out there in the parking lot, and he retrieved a knife. I believe his intention was to use it as a brandishing thing to kind of get the people to back off. And Tong saw him and jumped on his back, not knowing what his intents were. When he tried to push Tong off, he switched the knife around and pushed backwards in this manner, and that's what got him underneath the rib cage and came up that way. Otherwise, it would have hit his rib cage and probably would have stopped the knife from doing the damage that it did. But in the way he did it, he didn't even know he stabbed him. It was such a sharp knife, cut right into Tong's skin very easily, and did its damage internally. And then he pulled off, and of course then Tong fell to the ground. The knife wound had punctured, I believe, his lung and the tip of it his heart, I believe. We learned that this had been going on for a couple of weeks, that this taunting of these three Vietnamese newcomers to the area with these two, with the suspect and the co-suspect. Many of his kids said, whether it's factual or not, they said everybody knew. The unfortunate part is in society we put up a kind of a monument. And if you ask the children today, the students that go here, they don't know much about it.
For many in Davis, the recent events of 2003 reminded them of the events that led up to that 1983 death. That spring, a drawing and essay contest sponsored by Davis Asians for Racial Equality commemorated Tong's death. 20 years later, students were writing and drawing about what they still experienced in Davis schools.
In my class, there was a boy named Stevie who bullied people a lot. He also made fun of tame people like me. Kids need to learn not to bully younger kids for no reason and make up an excuse so they don't get in trouble. Stevie punched me in the stomach.
I've been racist against by this kid named Danny. He racist against me by saying black people are ugly like me. And he says he hates me every time I see him. When I see him, he puts up an L for loser, and he tells his sisters to do it to me. I think that it is wrong to racist against me because I am black.
On his blog, a junior high student wrote about other types of discrimination. He wrote about the daily struggles of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender youth, and those questioning their emerging sexual orientation.
Because as long as society allows us to continue, people are going to keep looking and looking for ways out, and tragedy will be repeated. I know what a battle it is. I know how much it hurts, and all the torments and battles inside that go on. I've thought to myself, no more wanting to scream my lungs out at almost everyone who I go to school with who uses the word gay as a derogatory term. No more pain. But throughout all my struggle, I've had amazing support. I've had people who I know I could call upon 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they'd be there.
At some point, that support wasn't enough. This letter was submitted posthumously after this young Davis student took his own life. During this volatile school year, the district had the help of numerous community groups, such as Davis Blacks for Effective Community Action, or BECA for short. BECA was founded in 1978 following numerous racial incidents in Davis schools, including students wearing Ku Klux Klan outfits at a football rally. At the beginning of the 2002 school year, BECA had presented a 26-page report to district officials outlining racial disparities in academic achievement and discipline patterns. By the spring, they felt the publication of these data could be deferred no longer. They made that report public in May 2003. Their findings included the following. Over 5 years, on average, students graduated from Davis High School very differently prepared for college depending on their race. African American, Latino, and Native American students were much less likely to have completed the course requirements to be able to apply to California's public four-year universities. African American, Latino, and Native American students were enrolled in the district's Gifted and Talented program at a fraction of the rate of white and Asian students. African American, Latino, and Native American students were overrepresented in the district's special education program. They were twice as likely to be in special education than in the district's GATE program. They were also much more likely to have been suspended at least once during the last school year. Nationally, this phenomenon is known as the achievement gap. Despite being considered a high-performing school district, marked racial disparities were present here as they are in schools all across America. Student testimonies and artwork spoke to the daily experience of race in our schools. We came to learn that hate crimes are most common in cities like ours, mostly white and changing rapidly. Denial was no longer an option.
It became all-consuming. There was no place that you could go that people weren't talking about it, with all sorts of opinions, with fear, with guilt, with tears, with anger.
And it was like this moment where the community just could no longer deny that we had racism happening here. And I think that's the hardest step for people to make. And I think there's a lot of people still who haven't made it. That was the beginning for a lot of people of recognizing we can't just pretend everything's fine. We have to actively address this.
The city was undergoing an identity crisis. The tension made us re-examine what type of city we lived in.
Davis has some wonderful programs to be proud of, teachers to be proud of. Its achievement level in many areas should be a source of pride. But an area where we are comparing Davis to other communities as it relates to students of color is not a source of pride.
I don't feel like this community is being the community I wanted to. I don't feel like I'm any longer a part of it in the way I used to feel that I was.
We all are here because we want the privileges that are available for raising children in Davis.
Sometimes across the country, again, we tend to respond to crisis as opposed to doing preventative kinds of things.
I don't think we get this. It's just not something we get, and I certainly didn't fully get it.
We're not a colorblind society.
We don't mention that race could be a possibility.
There's something more to this than what I see or what other people see at the face value, and that it must run deeper. It might not be something I understand, but I'm not going to judge it either.
Maybe that hate crime was a catalyst to get some of the movement's gears clanking to create social change in Davis.
I don't think I really had the resources that I needed to be able to do something about it.
We really wanted to do something that wasn't just, let's stick them in a workshop, let's do another committee.
It's always seemed to fizzle out, or maybe they come up with a product, usually a paper, or they're going to invite some consultant to talk, and then after that it just dies.
Over the summer, a diverse group of community leaders met to ponder the next steps. This group included Tansy Thomas, a 40-year resident and community activist of Davis, and former chair of the City of Davis Human Relations Commission; Rick Gonzalez, director of the Yolo County Mexican American Concilio; Jan Marie Garcia, a pediatrician and president of Becca; and Mariko Yamada, then a deputy county supervisor and now a California State Assembly member. They decided on 3 topics to pursue: youth involvement, parent involvement, and further research of the educational disparity data. But given how strongly students had spoken out over the previous year, they decided to focus their efforts on increasing youth involvement. Two other people at that community meeting were Nancy Erbstein and Jonathan Linden. In 1990, they co-founded an organization called Youth in Focus, a nonprofit that works with Central Valley schools to balance educational inequalities.
Youth in Focus is really a very powerful concept, a very powerful idea. And the power behind that idea is that the people who experience events ought to have a role in directing what happens to them.
Young people are taken through an 8-step training process over the course of several months. In a bold move, the school district decided to partner with Youth in Focus in Becca to give its high school students a place to talk about race and to help them be a part of the solution.
And they chose us as one of 6 or 8 community groups up and down the Central Valley for an initiative that was working on educational justice and juvenile justice.
There was a lot of uncertainty and nervousness about starting up. What would happen with it? How would it work? What would they produce? Well, what's going to come out of it? Or is this going to be another thing that makes the district look bad?
Is it something that's going to make the school look bad and draw negative attention to the school, which, as a principal, you never want to do? It just seemed like we were doing the right thing. And we're doing the right thing by kids.
And it took a lot of guts for him to do this, and a lot of guts for Mike to say he would support us and let us do it.
In the case of Davis High, the training process for the first cohort or group of students took place during the 2003-2004 school year and culminated with the final presentation in May 2004.
We're talking about who would be invited to be part of this group. That's when I said, it cannot be just the high-achieving kids, the 4.0s.
So it was a real different classroom setting in that there's a lot of different kids from a lot of different backgrounds, and not just racially or ethnically, but also very much religiously, economically, which all make a huge difference too.
And when you work with a lot of kids, you see an incredible amount in them to be a leader, to influence others. We picked and we got an incredible group of kids.
To tell you the truth, I didn't see myself doing this.
I didn't even really know what it was about.
I thought it would be like, kind of like a standard club.
We were having a hard time figuring out if it was really something that was different.
From what I heard, it sounded like a bunch of, super, how Davis has the above 4.0s kids. I thought it was like a bunch of those kids punching numbers, going out there like a live action crew, getting some shots of hate crimes going on.
That was one thing that confused me in the sense of okay, we're doing research, what does that mean?
I seriously thought it'd be something nice to put on a resume. No joke, that was my first initial thought. This would look great on a college app.
I didn't have any expectations. I just joined because I kind of wanted to do something different.
We were getting together as a group to talk about race, and I don't talk about race much.
The community partnership was led by Jan Marie Garcia and Courtney Tesler, a counselor at the high school.
Well, the evolution of it was fascinating to watch because at the beginning, remember, everyone sat in their little groups based on ethnicity.
The first few months with all the conversation was pretty annoying.
Because when we started out, we were 26 people, I think. So you put 26 people, you tell them we want to make a difference. What are the problems in Davis? Everyone comes up with something different, and none of them overlap.
It was really uncomfortable, really uncomfortable talking about race because you don't talk about race in school. I talk to my friends, but they're black, so
It was kind of hard to talk about it at first because I didn't know who these people were.
We were all on different pages. Some of us were comfortable talking about race, and others were just didn't talk at all, period.
The first year was tough. It was a lot of talking. It was a lot of getting to know people.
Jan, we thought we would be doing something. We thought there would be research involved. Where's the research? We're just talking with each other. What is this?
So there's something to be said for adults setting up arenas where it's safe to cross those boundaries and where it's expected that you will, that's one of the skills you're going to get, And we're going to sit back as adults and let it happen, but we're going to facilitate it too.
I've never defined myself by my race. That was always something that was really uncomfortable for me because a lot of people do. And I think for the first couple meetings in Youth in Focus, I felt like all people were doing was looking at each other, and this was all about race.
I think I've been pretty privileged growing up, and I didn't encounter as many experiences.
That created some tension too when we were talking, and some students are saying, I don't agree with you, I don't think race is a big deal.
It was awkward, just kind of being a white kid there, and I'm just like, I had never been in a room with so many racially diverse people.
When you're first sitting there, you kind of like, is it okay to say what I'm thinking? Is that okay with you guys?
I was afraid to say anything because, I was afraid to sound like a racist, I felt like anything I would say, I would come off as sort of the arrogant white kid.
Jan explained to us, she said, I can't give you guys a question. I can't help you guys get a question if you guys aren't a unit, if you guys can't understand each other, because then we're just going to be working against each other, and we're not going to be able to do this. We're not going to be able to function properly.
The Youth in Focus staff noticed students were having a hard time discussing race on more than a superficial level, so they held an all-day retreat at DQ University.
The one event I think that we did that kind of brought everyone sort of to the same page, to the same level, was going to DQ University.
Well, DQ University was the first tribal, Native American, and Chicano college to help uplift education of Native and Chicano people to transfer into the higher education of universities such as UC Davis and Stanford.
I didn't even know DQ University existed, and one of the parents who was taking us there was joking with us. She was just like, this is Native American territory, but don't worry, you won't need any passports.
But it was fun for me to sit back and kind of watch everyone else take it in and see what their reaction was, because it's not every day you go to a Native college or Native university and see what's going on there.
Going to different places like historical sites, like the DQ University, and seeing just being in a place that has very important history of resistance within Davis was very empowering.
So it's a big deal to a minority group of people that we never really think of. And it's funny that it's just outside of Davis. It's so close to home, but you don't even hear about it that much here.
Jan had people write a poem about sort of their race in Davis or their racial experience in Davis, and Nez wrote hers, and I think that was one of the first times I really figured out how important this was to people that weren't white, that had had sort of a negative experience in Davis.
What is my race? They asked me to write down my race, and I think very seriously. And I consider writing down the truth and having it read. I have a super caring mother who suffered a great deal to make my life easier, who told me I can, and who is strong for me, and who loves and cares for me no matter what, inside this body. I have a missing father who's a part of me biologically, who missed out on raising me and seeing me succeed, and who won't get to see me graduate inside this body. A part of me, I am a part of a rich culture and a dying heritage, but I am proud of it. I dance like my ancestors danced before me, and I am proud of that. My people have so much good to give to the world, but we were forced from our homelands. Instead we were called savages and forced our children were forced into boarding schools where they were beaten and often died. They asked me to write down my race, and I think very seriously. And I considered writing down the truth and having my answer read. I have a stereotype that I am a loser, that I am an alcoholic, a druggie, that I am a statistic, that I will have my first child at a young age, that I will not go to college, and that I'm a failure waiting to happen inside this body. I have a feeling that I'm going to succeed. I know I can do whatever I want. I also know that I'm more privileged than other Native kids, and I know I shouldn't take that for granted, but sometimes I do, and I'm sorry inside this body. I have an understanding that there's more than one kind of Native.
So doesn't anyone care? How come we don't get an extra box like the Asians to specify which type of native we are inside this body? But I stop and I simply write down American Indian, Alaska Native.
And I remember reading my version of the poem to people, which was, everybody's was different. But I remember after our presentation, a lot of people came up to me and were just telling me, I'm really touched by what you read, your poem, because I don't know any other Native person. I never knew what it was like to be growing up as a Native person. So it was really interesting for me to hear how you felt and how much hurt there was in certain aspects of your life, or where there was confusion in your life. And a lot of people appreciated that. And that made me feel even more important, because I thought, again, I'm the solo Native kid. I have to be our ambassador here. Gave me a sense of value and a sense of importance.
Yeah, I can't really speak for other people, but for me that was like, DQ was the time where I felt like, I kind of stepped back and looked back at Youth Focus and could say like, I'm kind of seeing where everyone's coming from now. So we've all been talking, but now it's time for us to all start listening to each other and hearing what we had to say.
We had never been a part of an experience that was so focused on learning from each other, learning from dialogue, being involved with each other to that extent.
Such a great amount of diversity that you couldn't ignore people.
I don't know if I've ever been on campus at DHS with this many not white people in the same room at the same time.
In a lot of my classes, it's just whites and Asians, and you don't get the viewpoint of, say, what a Latino person or an African American person feels about that.
Kind of demystify it, it's no longer this abstract, this kind of untouchable, the unmentionable.
When I was a sophomore and a junior, since junior high, okay, let's take it back. Ever since elementary school, I always knew that it was not a good thing to be a Latina. I always knew that. I always questioned if somebody didn't like me because I was Mexican. I've heard a lot of racial jokes. People have told me before.
I will say there's not a day that I don't experience racism, and there's not a week that I'm not followed by a cop in this town. It happens all the time. Me getting followed by the police is just something that I'm used to. It's a routine basis to me.
I was like, I'm Indian when I go to Powell's, and I'm totally white when I live in Davis. So it was interesting for me.
Being biracial, I think it's completely different. You have to think about two cultures. You're thinking about two different ways of life.
If you are in the majority group, you can ignore racial issues if you want to, because it's not something that affects you on a daily basis. When I look in the mirror in the morning, I see a black face, and I know that racism is something I might and most likely will encounter that day.
I grouped people together. I had my own prejudices. I judged people as a whole.
What kind of stereotypes are out there, and how definitions of racial groups, of what a white person would be, or so on, how it's not a solid definition. It's changed over the years a lot.
It's really amazing to hear, everyone agreed. Everyone was like, yeah, I feel that way. But that doesn't happen in class because you're by yourself and you're like, I feel that way, but no one else does.
It was always a struggle for me, always trying to figure out, who I was, where I belonged. If I heard a joke in Davis and I tried to tell it at a powwow, those kids would be like, huh? What? Why is that funny? And vice versa.
I didn't see Davis the way they did. I realized my ignorance was part of my background.
The term whitewashed kind of gives a different meaning in a way, because it's it doesn't only apply to Asians, but it also applies to blacks and Latinos, and it's a common experience that we all went through.
All these issues on a daily basis have affected my life, have turned me into the person that I am, have given me the opinions that I have.
I've talked about it a lot in my family growing up, and I never heard in school. So when I did have that opportunity and people were talking about race, I was like, wow. And I felt like it was actually a really good feeling.
People actually care where I'm from, I don't want to seem all self-righteous or anything, but I like telling people where I'm from. It feels good.
I didn't actually feel uncomfortable at all. It was the first time I felt really comfortable. And to hear other peers saying things that I've said, or to hear Jan like reading material that was like, oh, I felt this way.
Kids my own age at my school talk about their experiences and things they've faced. It really opened my eyes and made me think, wow, this really does go on.
So that's why I really felt I was actually really proud to be in that environment and to be there, like talking about them and like talking about my opinions on them and like my outlook on these issues, because everybody had like a different perception of these things.
People do speak so much more freely when they have someone who they feel has shared an experience where they don't have to explain every aspect of it, all the emotions, all the history, all the reasons you have all these emotions.
Kids are interested in talking about race because they know it's something that pervades their life and it's something that's always there, but it's not talked about.
People wanted to work, they wanted to express their opinion, they wanted to do something about it.
As they talked and as we worked with them and as they shared their stories and they got to know each other better, those lines that were drawn so firmly at the beginning disappeared.
Alina and Sergio came in and they started talking to us about methodology, and they told us like the difference between quantitative and qualitative.
What kind of research method you would use based on the context and your research goal.
They were really crucial in teaching us how to develop an interview, how to conduct focus groups, understanding what educational outcomes meant, what all these reports meant that were done about how many students were graduating.
It went from 4 or 5 hour meetings in the library, just dialogue and dialogue and dialogue, to when do you have time? When can you meet next? When can we meet next? Can we meet here? Can we meet there?
In May 2004, the students compiled and presented their research.
Our research question was as follows: how do expectations contribute to racial and ethnic differences in academic achievement, class placement, and discipline patterns?
The research scholars felt perceived expectations were important to measure because they reflect what students actually think, what affects their daily life. The scholars conducted focus groups with students of the same race to get at these issues. A consistent theme from the groups was that the level of academic achievement expected of them differed by race.
Basically, because I'm the only black student in the classroom, it's just me. Nobody wants to be my partner. It hurts sometimes.
There's just these stereotypes, Asian people are supposed to be smart, and then there are other races. Supposedly Latino races are supposed to fail, and black people are not supposed to care. And it's just not true. It's just kind of there.
But we knew that, these themes were reoccurring. They were happening for people of different races, which was something kind of important. And we wanted to explore it a little bit more.
And so after we did our focus groups, we felt like, we had a lot of information, but we didn't have a lot of quantitative information. And so we decided we were going to do surveys.
The written surveys created by the scholars were completed by more than 600 students. Survey findings confirmed what the scholars found in the focus groups. 25% of white students and 36% of Asian American students believed teachers expected students of their race to perform above average. Only 3% of African American and 4% of Latinos felt the same way. Results were similar for how they believed their classmates expected students of their race to perform. Similar results were found for counselors. For all three groups, the scholars believed the higher expectations that Asian American students felt others had of them was evidence of the model minority phenomenon. Sometimes the student's success or failure is attributed to his or her family's expectations. But what the scholars found is that there was a greater percentage of Black and Latino students compared to whites who felt their families expected them to achieve above average. Written survey results about behavior were also consistent with focus group findings. Students felt expectations of behavior also differed by race. They asked students, for the same behavior, how often are Black students disciplined more harshly than non-Black students? The choices were always, most of the time, almost never, never, and I don't know. A surprisingly substantial percentage of white and Asian American students, along with the majority of African American and Latino students, believe that African American students are disciplined more harshly for the same behavior. The same pattern existed for Latino students. When asked how often the behavior of African American students was watched more closely, again, a surprising and substantial proportion of white and Asian American students and the majority of African American and Latino students responded always, or most of the time. Students had similar perceptions when asked about closer monitoring of Latino students. The scholars spent the next year implementing their action plans and giving presentations. In August 2004, they held an all-day youth summit in Davis and presented their data before their peers. Davis High students pledged to each take at least one new step in making their campus a better place for all students. The scholars were also invited to give expert testimony at the state capitol several times in support of bills to increase access to higher education and for hate crimes education. They explained their research to students and teachers at Sacramento State University and UC Davis. Across the state, the scholars gave presentations at Fresno, UCLA, and to the California Teachers Association in Los Angeles. Nationally, the scholars presented in Savannah, Georgia at the National Youth at Risk Conference, in Connecticut at a Community Action Research Conference, and in New York City at the American Education Research Association. And the scholars took their data internationally to Beijing, China at the 5th International Conference on Diversity in Organizations, Nations, and Communities.
Jane Cho wrote an abstract and submitted it, and we were asked to go to China.
And then the year later, we are in an international conference across the sea.
With China, it was just such a fresh, clean perspective, and it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. We were able to present at this multicultural conference that had people from all over the world.
We really felt like we were part of a worldwide thing. Everyone was moving towards change, and we were part of it. And that was one of those times that I just felt like we were on the road to success. Like we were doing what we needed to do to make a change in Davis.
People are more connected than they think across cultures and countries. May have totally different customs, but you have a lot of the same issues and a lot of the same problems.
So they presented, and some people came, not convinced they wanted to be there. In fact, they felt so many people needed to hear it, they actually asked them to present another time so they could get more people there.
This whole time, Jan's been trying to give us a voice, and here we were, like 2 years later, literally speaking to the world, and not just Davis.
I think what they learned and what they told me was they realized the answer was within the kids.
The impact that we had on so many different people from all over the world, and they had such positive things to say about what we had done. That was one of the proudest moments of my life.
Then, in March 2005, another pair of Davis teenagers vandalized 2 churches and 2 schools, causing more than $30,000 worth of property damage and leaving racial epithets spray-painted on the buildings. While over 150 residents gathered at a local vigil, and elected officials declared, again, not in our community, other Davis adults wondered if the city was overreacting. Students at Davis High had had enough. They were being identified with acts of hate. The apathy over these several events had to stop.
There was hate crimes. Everybody knows about, how people came and they had swastikas on a bunch of churches, kill the niggers, kill the Jews.
Some people write off as kids being kids, which is one of those things that still makes me angry to this day. I don't see how you can call hate crime kids being kids.
I wanted to do something in response to the hate crimes that had happened. I wanted to make a statement that students at the school are not apathetic. We really care about what's going on, and we want adults to care about what's going on.
I mean, the research is great by itself, but that's all it is research. I mean, people can choose to look at it or not. The research can be ignored.
We just wanted to get the students involved so there could be some sort of outcry.
They did it in a very respectful manner.
We really didn't want to hurt the school because we knew that the school wasn't responsible for the actions, and so we didn't want to take money away from the school.
It was very organized.
I didn't really know what they were doing until I received a flyer.
We actually went to Principal Mike Cawley.
At first they were just, buzzing here and there. What's going on? Like, what is this?
Mr. Cawley, we want to do something. We feel like a walkout is necessary. It's the right thing to do. We're going to do this. Can you support us? And he said yes.
Yeah, I fooled him.
we didn't expect that. We thought he was gonna go ballistic.
We basically orchestrated this walkout within 12 hours.
We made an announcement over the intercom, very dramatic.
That there was going to be a walkout.
That march brought a bunch of people together.
Everybody walked out of class, came to the quad.
And Tanvir, like, powerful speaker, Rod, powerful.
And I gave a speech in the middle, then Rod gave his speech.
They were just speaking like, man, this is Davis, like this is our community. This stuff is going on. We can't let it be dormant anymore, We've got to reveal what's going on.
We picked up her sign, End Apathy, this big sign. And I was in front, and I was leading the charge, and I was walking.
Agreeing that there had to be something done about the problem. It made me not feel so alone.
The energy was it shifted from this confusion to like this organized flow, like, all right, this is our mission statement, this is what we're gonna do.
We just let her rip. Like, we had rehearsed it, we had coordinated it, but as it happened, like,
get up and actually do something about it, like make an active change right here, right now.
Rod ran up to me, like, we were like a few blocks down, like, Tanvir, slow down, dude. And I look behind me and there's like this huge gap and everybody else is way behind. I'm like, crap.
Tanvir just shoots out right afterwards. And we had like Seamus on the guitar, and we had like, he starts playing right away. Tanvir comes at me with the sign, so I had to duck. Like, I almost got taken out by the End the Apathy sign. Like, how funny would it have been if I had like ran through End the Apathy sign to start the march, like.
Oh man,
that was a wild night, man.
I'm a pretty reserved guy. I'm not very outgoing, but I was so passionate those 3 or 4 days that, even now I can feel all of these emotions well up inside me. That, those 3 or 4 days, I was a man on a mission. One important aspect of our walkout was to link it with an action plan. We wanted to do something with it. Implementing a course where race and social justice would be talked about much more openly.
As a way to prevent hate crimes and improve the social environment that gives rise to such acts, scholars reissued their request for a Davis High class that would address these issues and train students to create a different community than they were experiencing.
To plan a course in race relations that would align with state standards, where the kids could be in class with one another every day, talking about these issues, building relationships, and then having a lot more time to practice presentations and maybe even consulting with statistics classes and history classes when many projects came up.
It wasn't just, raising emotion, getting people excited about something, and then that's it.
A second cohort of scholars was trained during the 2005-2006 school year. To avoid confusion with Youth in Focus, the organization, the group changed its name to Catalyst for Social Justice, or the CSJ Student Research Scholars. A third cohort of CSJ scholars underwent an abbreviated training during the 2006-2007 school year. They explored the biracial experience of growing up in Davis and updated the educational outcomes data. Over the next 3 years, the program impacted the lives of students and staff. Esther Latta is a graduate of Davis High and is now a social worker at the UC Davis Medical Center.
I came from a migrant background. My parents never went to school.
My mom learned to read and write, but it was, maybe first, second grade in a village in Mexico. My dad did not ever learn to read. I took the basic classes. No teacher ever told me I could go beyond that. There were some teachers that actually, when I graduated, encouraged me to apply to work at Lucky's and things like that, so I wouldn't have to work in the field.
Her daughter, Amanda, was one of the scholars in the program.
When she entered her first English honors class, Amanda felt that the first day the teacher looked at her different, that the teacher made it a point to verify that she was in the right class.
In a similar incident, a Davis High counselor came into Amanda's PE class to help students research their college choices.
Amanda starts researching Berkeley, and the counselor comes to her and says, "Wait, what are you doing?" And she said, "Well, I'm looking at UC Berkeley and UCLA." And the counselor said, "Wait, but don't you know that those are schools that are really hard to get into?" And Amanda said, "Yeah, I did know that. And, that's kind of why I want to go there, because I do want to be really challenged." The counselor still kind of did not believe her and said, "Wait, well, what math are you taking? Well, what English are you taking?" Like, still not believing that she would qualify to go to these universities. And she said, "Listen, my parents have gone to college. I know what UCs require. My dad works in UC Davis, and so I want to research UC Berkeley." And as she walked away, Amanda just felt no longer kind of taken back by what had just happened, but more, upset. She was a little angry that this had happened again. They were not really looking at a Latina student who was a high achiever as a student with great potential. They were really looking at her the same way they looked at me.
With the help of CSJ, Amanda came to understand why others sometimes held low expectations of her. Amanda was elected by her peers to serve as student body liaison to the school board. She graduated from Davis High and is currently a student at UC Berkeley.
To be given the power to know how to channel my anger and know how to channel my determination was, one of the greatest gifts anybody could give me.
It has changed the way she sees the problem and the way that she wants to be involved with the problem. She wants to be part of the solution to the problem now.
Theater has an incredibly powerful voice.
Gwyneth Bruce is an English and drama teacher at Davis High and is director of the drama department.
When I first got this job, and for a very long time, I felt that my job was to put on the most artistic, excellent productions I could. That was my job. That was my mission. Then I went to the Youth in Focus presentation and I went, whoa, I'm way out of whack. None of my student board understood what the problem was. They didn't see a problem because they were all white. They didn't see a problem. And another woman gave me amazing advice. She said, "It's lovely that you do colorblind casting, but you also do very Eurocentric pieces."
Bruce recruited a more diverse group of students to the drama department. The autumn following the Scholars' 2004 presentation, she produced Songs of Ourselves, a compilation of folktales from diverse cultural backgrounds.
So in November of 2004, I have this critical mass of students of every color and every social strata at Davis High excited about the drama department. And I know that I have a very small window with those kids to do something fun and amazing. And I decided to go for it and write our own show. My wonderful student who'd been with me, this was her third year, it was her senior year. She had a great investment in what was happening with the season, with what shows I picked. And she said, "You've already done something for them. Now let's move on and do our very wonderful white show that you promised us." And I said, "No. if you can't live with this, then I need you to go do something else. I need you not to talk bad about it, but I am going to do this. And it was scary. It was very scary because I hate confrontation and I hate butting heads with people I love. But it was something that I couldn't deny. Now, I see my job as much more than doing pretty plays to doing powerful pieces that speak for my students.
In the spring of 2007, 3 years after it had been proposed by the original cohort of scholars, the new course, Race Relations and Social Justice in U.S. History, was approved by the school board. Kevin Williams is the Davis High social studies teacher who accepted the challenge of developing and teaching this new course.
I hadn't really thought about teaching the course, I think, so much as I had really, after that presentation for the public, I had really thought about where am I? You get so impressed when young people are maybe tackling a problem and being a little more active than you're being. Never in my teaching career had I said, I'm gonna do something that might be beneficial to people on a different level than just straight, I'm going to get you excited about history, but maybe I could do something that might make you a better rounded person, and I would learn from that too.
New textbooks were approved. Williams went through a specially crafted series of professional development activities, funded in part by the school district. Staff from Youth in Focus consulted on integrating the youth research training into a classroom setting. Along with 4 other district staff members, Williams attended a training entitled Mirrors of Privilege, Making Whiteness Visible, featuring Shakti Butler. In a supportive, constructive environment, Williams experienced some of the unsettling feelings his white students might experience in learning about U.S. history from the lens of Americans marginalized because of their race or ethnicity.
One of the things I'm really excited about with CSJ is how we accomplished in creating the first multiracial history class for the high school. And basically in this class, you'll be studying how race helps form the society that is in today's world.
This is the first class I've had with a lot of these people, and it's just strange that I would never otherwise be in any kind of situation with them. And that's really weird that we're so separated like that.
Just to feel free to ask those awkward questions, and you learn so much by just listening to what other people have to say.
Through breaking down these stereotypes, I could show other people who I was, and they could show me who they were, and we could get a better understanding of, what people really like.
Before taking this class, I was afraid that I wasn't allowed to even ask about minority stereotypes or discrimination. Now, after taking this class, I know that I can give my opinion and that asking questions is not the same as being ignorant.
Before taking this class, I didn't know much about the history of other minorities besides African Americans. Now, after taking this class, I understand that other races have had their hard times as well.
Before taking this class, I unconsciously blanketed all Asians as just the generic super overachievers. Now, after taking this class, by studying how some whites in the civil rights movement ignored their racist symptoms, I recognize my own.
Continuous effort by adults and young people to look at an issue over time has led them to create something that fits for this community, that's going to have impact.
It's a message that you can have something as horrible as a racial incident in your community that maybe nobody really knew how to address. And then take the energy and the focus to make sure that change is achieved and is achievable.
Following the crimes and testimonies of students in 2003, our school district made several changes that year. Testing for the Gifted and Talented Program, or GATE, was administered to all 3rd grade children. Consequences for the use of racial slurs were added to student discipline. Social climate committees made up of students, parents, community members, and staff were reactivated at each school campus. A part-time district climate coordinator was established. Educators voluntarily participated in a training called the Unconscious Bias Program. It is a joint effort of the Davis and California Teachers Associations. An Achievement Gap Task Force was established. 2 community conversations were conducted to further discuss the achievement gap. A new academic support center with tutors and mentors was established at Davis High School. with special emphasis on meeting the needs of English language learners. The Scholars Written Student Survey was originally administered in the spring of 2004. It has since been repeated twice, in the spring of 2006 and 2008. Some encouraging trends have emerged. The percentage of African American, Latino, and Asian students who believe their counselors expect students of each of their race to perform above average increased. The percentage of white and Latino students who were suspended dropped by half. And the percentages of African American and Latino students who believed their classmates expected students of their race to perform above average increased steadily over the last several years. From 2000 to 2007, the dropout rate for African Americans and Latino students declined markedly, while the dropout rate for white students in the Davis School District remained essentially the same.
Their data is consistent over a 5-year period, and you got to remember now, the students are new students coming in. It's not the same students that did it for 5 years in a row. These are different students because as they graduate, new students have to take their place. But the data is so similar.
The research says clearly that by the age of 3, kids are already forming ideals about race and how they look and color and issues that we would put under the category of diversity. And they may not be vocalizing it to you, but they already are. They already know that I may have dark skin, you have light skin. They're very, very curious.
For the class to be funded, it needed 29 students to sign up. It got 108 students, requiring 3 class periods to accommodate the student demand. In the 2009-2010 school year, there were 4 class periods.
The outcome of this is amazing. You know, we have this classroom now where we can continue to teach children and continue to teach students to become like even more better, like powerful leaders in their community and change it from within.
When I was with my friends, you know, rethink a joke I was about to tell, you know, and it was just a joke for the fun of being a joke. But when I started to realize that, you know, there's a lot of hurt behind that joke, and to a lot of people it's very offensive.
The sooner we start with young people and help them to frame it, these issues and questions that they have around race and diversity in a positive way, the less we're likely to see some of the name calling that we see on campus, some of the racial incidents that we see on campus, some of the things we see with adults, quite frankly, when they're in their careers and they're older, as a result of us not really addressing these issues while kids are young.
We would also like to hire a faculty that would present more diversity at Davis High School. There are currently
I thought Youth in Focus would be just about research, but I mean, now when I think about it, Youth in Focus to me, I don't think about the research, I think about the experience and what came of it and what person it made me into.
This was why I felt so close to this high school, was because I did something meaningful. I strongly feel like I made a change.
And so how can you change an institutionalized mindset is by bringing in an institutionalized program.
How do you think I should respond to this? What should I say? Do you think this is something that needs to be addressed? And I frequently say, yes, it does, but you're the person who needs to go back and address it.
So one story about Youth in Focus that I still remember vividly is at the beginning of the year, our first year, when Jan asked us, how many of you here believe that you can change the world? And I remember only one student raised their hand. And it was sort of like this tentative, maybe sort of I can sort of kind of do it, but not really, I don't think so.
It's good to see that there's a lasting impact and all the waves of change that we started are still going through our community.
When she asked that same question at the end of the year, everybody raised their hand.
We got to see that we can really make a change in Davis and we could make a difference.